Welcome to Podcast 83, a regular look at the news, stories, and trends related to Michigan's 83 counties, from Keweenaw to Monroe, Chippewa to Berrien, brought to you by the Michigan Association of Counties.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back. This is Podcast 83, put on by the Michigan Association of Counties. I am Deena Bosworth, Legislative Director, and with me is Meghann, Keit. We're back.
Everyone, hey, I'm so excited to be doing podcast again.
I know, right? I know. We took a break. We didn't do it while we were having our conference and things were a little crazy. But now that the legislature is back in full session and keeping very busy, it's about time we get back and talk to our membership and tell you what's going on. So it's been a great few weeks, actually, since our conference, and we came back. The budget is done. Finally, the fiscal year 22 budget, which started October 1st, is done. We got a 2% increase in revenue sharing, which was great. It actually went into our base too, and not just the one-time funding, which we often got. So very, very happy to hear about that. There was an item deemed unenforceable. Meghann, you want to talk about that?
Sure. So each year the legislature looks at our central local public health services line. We've generally been around $51.5 million that they've funded for our local public health services. Hasn't been too controversial in the past, but of course this year's a little bit different. And so there was some language that basically tied up that funding if there was a local public health order in place, really pointing to some of these mask orders that have been really controversial the past, 6 months now. And so that funding was basically tied to whether or not you had a local health order, and you wouldn't get that funding if the Board of Commission didn't support that local public health order declared by the local health officer. So I went through, the governor essentially looked at that and said in a letter to the legislature that that was completely unconstitutional and unenforceable. Therefore, the money would still go out and they would not be enforcing that part of the boilerplate language in the budget. And so, we've heard from the governor's legal team that's where they're kind of sticking to it because of unconstitutionality with that specific language. So I do expect maybe more conversation to be had around this with the legislature, the courts potentially, but that's where we are today.
Yeah, so that's good news. So regardless, the money's going to go out. It doesn't matter, what orders are in place or if they were approved by the board. So, for that, funding for public health, again, extremely important. So that's fantastic. Now that the budget's done, they're going to start looking more at this federal funding. So the American Rescue Plan monies. As we know, counties got $1.9 billion, cities, villages, and townships, just over $2 billion. That's great, but the state got $6.5 billion. And that's a huge chunk of change. Now they used part of that $6.5 billion, $774 million worth, when they did the fiscal year 22 budget that just got enacted. But there's still remaining about $5.7 billion out there. For many months now, we've been talking about how we're working as part of a larger coalition to talk to the state about how to allocate that remaining $5.7 billion. Although it sounds like a huge number for locals to get all of this money, and there's all kinds of things you can spend it on. The fact of the matter is that there's so many units of local government, and your smaller cities and smaller townships really aren't getting that much money. They're not. So how do we maximize that? Like I said, we've been talking about it for a while, working with a coalition of groups, business interests, energy companies, nonprofits, environmental groups, really trying to lay out what our priorities are. And I think we've done a great job of that. So last week was the public unveiling of it. And Steve participated for us on a virtual press conference, which we will be more than happy to get out to you. We put the link in our legislative update last week. I'm sorry, can you hear my dogs barking? They're driving me crazy. I should have been doing this from the office, but driving me nuts. As long as you can't hear them, we're good. Okay. Sorry, back to the topic at hand. Press conference, unveiled the plan last week. It's wonderful. It's absolutely wonderful. Now, it's not all money for local governments. There's money in there for all different kinds of people. And so, well, I'll break it down a little bit. Infrastructure, that's broken up between like water infrastructure and broadband infrastructure. So there's $2.5 billion that we're asking for water infrastructure. $500 million for broadband infrastructure. Fiscal health, that's really local units and that's businesses. That's like the unemployment trust fund. There's about $800 million ask into that. Housing and community development is another $800 million ask. Economic development, workforce development, business assistance, we've got another $910 million ask for that. And then $500 million for public health and safety. So like I said, that plan was unveiled last week. And if you want the details of the plan, go to the legislative update that we sent last week and click on that link and it'll take you to the detailed document. Or you can go to our website. So we've got a website put together for it. And it's www.miroadmap.com. And I really do encourage all of you to go in and look at it, read it, and help us talk to the legislature about it. Meghann, you want to talk a little bit about our plan of attack on it?
Sure. I think last week certainly went really well with a press conference. Again, Steve was on that, but with a lot of other partners, not only from local government, had a lot of pickup in the media. We had calls from legislative offices wanting to know more about it. So I think, at this point, it's really trying to work with those in the coalition already, maybe some that haven't been part of the month worth of work, but that saw this and thought, this is exactly what we need. We need to be part of a larger voice, because I think it goes a long way when you have groups from local governments, the business community, the nonprofits, all supporting something that is really about the greater good, right? And what we do for Michigan today with a significant investment. So, again, a lot of conversations are going to be had. The legislature is talking about this constantly as well. They've already talked about kind of starting with the infrastructure piece, but infrastructure, where does it end, right? You talk about roads and bridges, water and sewer, but they've also been talking about mental health facilities, and where we build out with, our criminal justice and mental health system. So when they say infrastructure, I think a lot is going to be in there, and a lot that's going to overlap with what the coalition's been talking about and what we've been proposing.
Yeah, you're right. I know you've had many, many conversations in the legislature already about some of the priorities that are laid out in this document, as have I. I want to caution our membership, though, understand that this is our proposal that we're putting forward. This is something that, again, really kind of unprecedented, large coalition of people got around the table and talked about what's best for our communities. And so, there's a lot of ideas there, and I think they're being really well received, but that doesn't mean the legislature is not going to change it. So there are some programs in there, some grant programs that we have proposed in there. There are some grant programs in there where we proposed a match. So you take your local dollars and you match it with state dollars and extend it even further. Some, like I said, are just direct allocations for things that are important across the state. So does it totally just serve counties? No, but it absolutely does serve our communities, the people who live there, the businesses who are really trying to recover from, the pandemic and what has happened. Some, economic development, workforce development, housing, have money for our facilities, have money for water infrastructure, whether it be lead line replacement or stormwater or septic system replacement. It runs the whole gamut. Could we solve every problem? No. Are we going to get everything that we want in here? Sure hope so, but kind of doubt it. We'll see what happens with the legislature. really want to stress, look at it, look at the plan, miroadmap.com. Read it, talk to your legislators about it, really advocate for the programs that we have put forth in there, because I think we're going to be stronger if we're banded together. Meghann, you want to hop on to 911?
Yeah, I wanted to mention it to our members since we talked about it a little bit at the conference. So if you were there, you heard House Bill 5026 was going to be brought up soon, but we were really waiting on the budget to get done because we had requested a one-time appropriation that would essentially fulfill the entire base network for that next gen infrastructure, make sure we have the ability to roll that out without increasing those fees that are in statute. And so since the budget got done and they did include the $16 million one-time appropriation, the substitute bill was heard in committee now 2 weeks ago, and essentially would eliminate the postpaid fee on cell phones. So basically any contract that you have with Verizon or an AT&T contract, there's an annual fee that would not be increased under this legislation. But on the prepaid, so where you can go online or you go to a store, buy those minute phones, there is a fee that's set on there, and that would be increased under the legislation for 1%. Essentially, the revenues that the prepaid were bringing in didn't meet what we had expected. And so the recommendation was to still have a slight increase there, but significantly different from the initial version that was introduced. And so we're really excited about that. And we do expect to have that voted out of committee this week, and then to the full House, and it has to go through the Senate. And of course, we're up against a deadline of December 31st of this year. That's when the sunset to the entire Enabling Act expires. And so we need to have that extended until December 31st, 2027, which is in the legislation that's moving. And I don't anticipate any difficulty. It's just really getting it through the process. All of the providers, the Telecom Association, they were really, appreciative and wanted to see that one-time appropriation. So since that went through in the legislature, was able to get that for us in the budget. I don't anticipate a lot of problems. It's just timing and getting this done. And really what's not a lot of session days that are left. So,
right. It sounds like a long time, but it's really not when you're dealing with committee calendars and, House and Senate session. I mean, it's just a limited amount of time. Yeah. Speaking of that, the 4-year term bill for county commissioners is going to have a hearing. I want to say it's October 27th. So it'll be that last week of October where they're going to take it up for discussion in the House Committee on Local Government and Municipal Finance. Really pretty excited about that. So if you have, any of those legislators, or you want to talk to your House members about 4-year terms and help us out, we greatly appreciate it. So yeah, I don't think it'll be voted on that week. It might be voted out the following week, barring any huge problems. It should get out, and then it'll be up on the House floor, once we kind of figure out where the votes are and what's going on. So again, reach out, talk to your members about all of these things, and help us out so we can help you.
Yeah, and call with any other questions on any other issue, because these are just a few of the hundreds of bills that we're watching.
Right. I know. Can you imagine if we talked about all of them? We'd be on here for hours and hours and hours. All right. So with that, thank you everyone for listening to our podcast. Again, call if you need anything, or shoot us an email. Thanks.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to today's episode of Podcast 83, brought to you by the Michigan Association of Counties.